It's now 6 months since protesters took to the streets of Iran demanding a fair outcome to the elections, trying to incur the downfall of President Ahmadinejad. One of the defeated presidential candidates, Mehdi Karoubi, was more outspoken than most. He was threatened with jail after claiming the election was rigged and that opposition supporters had been physically abused. Tonight, in an exclusive interview, he's invited the BBC into his home and spoken frankly about his predictions for the country. Here's our Tehran correspondent, John Lyne.
6 months on, and the Iranian government and opposition are squaring up for a new confrontation. New demonstrations, the possible arrest of opposition leaders like this man, Mehdi Karoubi. It could be an explosive mix. Mr. Karoubi has been one of the most outspoken of all the opposition leaders. He invited the BBC into his home in North Tehran. The government has shut down his office. It's one of the few interviews given by any senior opposition figure in Iran since immediately after the election.
We have lots of new restrictions. We used to have a newspaper that spread our opinions. We used to have party meetings. They've all been shut down. We can't even get permission for any social gatherings.
Hearing about those restrictions, it's remarkable really that Mr. Karoubi agreed to speak to us at all, especially bearing in mind the way the Iranian government's blamed the BBC for much of the post-election unrest. It's really quite an act of defiance. But Mr. Karoubi is enough of a veteran to remember how Ayatollah Khomeini used the media during his exile in Paris 3 decades ago.
A lot of Western media were writing about Ayatollah Khomeini. In Europe, his opinions were being carried by the media. BBC Radio reflected his views. How is it that was okay? When the BBC reflected his views, it was all right then.
The last time I met Mehdi Karoubi was 3 days after the election in June. His aides were pleading with him not to go down to an opposition rally for fear he'd be killed. But instead, we found millions of Iranians gathered in central Tehran. You can't even estimate the size of this crowd. It goes all the way as far as I can see that way, and it's the same the other way, the other side of this bridge. It's an incredible crowd, and this is for a demonstration the government said was banned, and there would be serious consequences for anybody attending. People here just seem to have no fear whatsoever.
At the beginning of the movement, it was just a protest against the election. We didn't recognize it as a serious election. The government's response, the crackdown, has not calmed things down at all. In fact, it's just made the chanting louder. It's just increased the people's demands.
And it's not just what's been seen on the streets. Mehdi Karoubi has been pressing allegations that opposition detainees, both male and female, have been repeatedly raped by their prison interrogators. The government has vehemently denied his accusations and threatened to prosecute Mr. Karoubi. So does he still stand by them?
When the judiciary comes and shuts down my office, takes away my documents and threatens those who have come forward with allegations, so much so that some have had to leave the country, then I have to tell you, I still believe that the people who have spoken to me are telling the truth.
President